In the previous section, we have seen how exactly we can render the entire template upon the user interaction on the screen. When clicking on this button, the entire component is rendered, where we are able to toggle between these two HTML pages that we have using this button. In the next concept, we'll be looking at one of the common implementations that you would come across in your real-time scenarios. We'll be looking at one of the common concepts that we'll be coming across, which is nothing but having one LWC component inside another one. So this is also traditionally called as parent and child components. So the one that is holding your component that is inside it is called as parent LWC component, and the one that is inside it is called as child LWC concept. So we'll understand how do we go about this requirement. So as a part of this requirement, what we'll do, we'll go ahead and create two LWC components, and we'll see how can I put the child LWC component in the parent one, or how do I refer this child component inside a parent component. So that is the requirement as a part of this section. Let's explore how can we do that. For that, I'm switching back to my VS Code. What I'll do for our understanding, let's go ahead and create two Lightning components and name them as parent demo LWC. And let's create one more LWC component and name it child demo LWC. All right, so I've created two components here. One is the child demo LWC. Another one is the parent demo LWC. Right, so we have two components here. Again, as a part of this requirement, I'm not building anything specific in this components. For time being, what I'll do, I'll go ahead and get the code that we have in our LWC component that we have used earlier, just to differentiate which component that we are looking at. I've copied the Lightning card here, and I'll paste it in both the parent demo LWC component as well as the child one. So I've pasted this Lightning card. You can get this code from your component library also, or you can make use of the previous code that we have. And I'm just calling the title for this Lightning card as parent LWC component. And do I need a button here? I do not need any button as such. I want that body here, so I'll just go and write the p tag that we have. Feel free to ignore this section. In case if you do not know, feel free to get that from the component library. Inside that body, what I'm writing it as parent body. And footer, I'll say parent footer. All right, so we have our first component ready. I'll take the same thing and put it in my child. Because in my child also, I want to do the same thing, just that I'll update the titles accordingly to match the content. Right, we have a couple of things done so far. We have a parent and a child components. And as of now, there is no relation between these two things. And just to show you, I do not have anything in the JS file for the child as well as the parent. Now, if you remember, we also discussed about this is exposed. For time being, what I am doing, I'm not making any changes here. What I'll do in the parent file, js-matter.xml, I'll just make some changes here. What am I doing? I'm exposing this component for the users to use them. And also, I've exposed that this component would be available on my record page. That is what I've done. In my parent JS file js-matter.xml, I'll just do the same change again here. I want to expose both the components at once. Now what I'll do, I'll go ahead and deploy these two components. Both the components are deployed. Let's go back to our Salesforce org, and I'll switch to the Lightning app builder page. lightning record page for the case. And what I'm expecting this time, I'm expecting two components to be available for me so that I can add them on this page. Right, if I go to the custom section, that is where I can see parent demo LWC, which is this one. And similarly, I have a child demo LWC as well. I'm just adding them one below the other. Click on save. If I go back to this screen and refresh it, I see two components with the code that we have generated is visible here. Now, what is our requirement? Our requirement is to put this child component in this parent. So how do we do that? Let's go back to our VS Code and make those changes quickly. Now, what I need, I want the child component to be displayed in my parent component. How do I refer that? Simply write C hyphen your LWC component name, your child LWC component name. So I'll write child demo LWC. This is my component here. So I've just wrote my child component inside my parent. If you are familiar with your Aura component, there you would write C colon the child component name. Similarly, in LWC, we follow the kebab case. That is why we write C hyphen. So I'll just make this change and deploy it. There is one important point that I need to highlight. For time being, I'm not going through that. For our understanding, let's deploy this component and see what would happen. If you see here, as soon as I deploy this component, it is throwing me an error saying that failed to resolve the entry for the module child demo LWC. But if you see here, my child component is already present. The LWC components that I've deployed, the child demo LWC is already been deployed. And we have seen that in our org as well. So in our org, I was able to show you that child component. Why is the VS Code or why is Salesforce telling me this error that this component is not available or failed to resolve the entry for this module? So it is saying that I'm not able to enter into it. The reason for that is in LWC, the HTML template follows kebab case. What does that mean is anything that you have declared as capital letter in your naming of your component, that should be replaced with hyphen and a small letter. So if your component name goes like this, child demo LWC, if you see, I've wantedly named this component in a way that it would throw an error. So my component goes child, and here is a capital letter, and here is another capital letter. Now, how is it transposed in my HTML? It becomes child hyphen demo hyphen LWC. That is how I need to resolve it. So that is how your component would be rendered in the UI. So that is your kebab case. So what I'll do, I'll just make that changes by replacing the capital letters with a small letter and putting a hyphen in front of them. I've made that change this time. So my parent, I have not changed anything on my child. Just I'm deploying the parent LWC demo component once more to see if this time the changes would be deployed to the Salesforce org. We are able to successfully deploy those changes. Since that is done, let's switch to Salesforce org and see what is the difference that we would see. Now, if this time there is something that is interesting happening here, which is nothing but inside my parent LWC, I have a child LWC being rendered. If I draw an imaginary line here, it would make more sense. This section that I have highlighted in red is coming from my child component, whereas the component that I'm highlighting in green is my parent component. Now, what did we do here? We have embedded a child component in a parent component. So this child is being enclosed in a parent component. So that is how you would go ahead and use a child component in your parent. Now, if you ask me what is the need of putting a child component in the parent, is there any specific use case where I can think of such requirements coming my way? The answer is very simple. I can give you a simple example that would demonstrate the same thing. If you think about Apex class, in the Apex class, we would write multiple methods. Method 1, method 2, method 3. Now, what is the need of writing a method? The need of writing a method is nothing but whenever you have a similar logic that you want to execute, instead of writing it again, you can just call this method. So that you can get the results. Similarly, you would write method 2 for a specific requirement. Same goes with your method 3. Whenever a similar requirement comes in, instead of writing it from the scratch, you can make use of this method 3 to get that logic or the business logic requirement achieved. Similarly, in LWC also, there might be a requirement that might come to you regularly. There is a requirement in the LWC where I see that it is being quite frequently used. Instead of writing that code every time, what I can do, I can put that in a component. Instead of writing that code next time when the requirement comes, I can use this LWC component that has been provided for the same reason. So that reduces the number of lines of code that I need to write, and it also increases the efficiency of the development. It also reduces the time in terms of moving the changes to the production. A simple example, if you ask me what is the simple example that you can give me to help me understand this concept, if we go back to the VS Code here, this lightning card is an example for the same thing. So Salesforce has designed a logic that helps us display that information in that card format. And what we are doing, we are just making use of it. Similarly, if you have any LWC component that requirement is coming frequently to you, instead of writing it every time, you can build one LWC component and help others to use it. So that is what you can learn from this parent and child components. Child component is nothing but the component that is been enclosed, and the parent component is nothing but the component that is holding that component which is written inside it. We are just taking the parent and child naming convention here so that it would be easier to understand. Now, if you see here, I have a child component that has been already added here. Now, for some reason, you have decided that no one should directly use the child component. It should be used in a parent component. So they cannot directly add that component on the UI, but they can use it in a parent component. How do I restrict somebody adding the child component directly to the record page? Allow that as a child component in a parent component. So what I mean by that is, I do not want anybody to directly use this child component and add it to the record page, but that component that I'm building can be enclosed in a parent component. How do I do that? The answer relies in your .js-meta.xml file. If you see here, both the parent and the child components are being exposed. Both the parent .js-meta.xml file and the child .js-meta.xml file are having this attribute set to true. Now, what I do not want people to use, I do not want people to use this child file directly. What I can do, I can set it to false. And I can also remove this attribute telling them nobody can directly add this component onto the pages, but they can use as a child component in their parent components. Now, if I deploy this code, what would happen? I've made a change on child, so that is why I'm only deploying the child component here. Let's see what would happen here. If I deploy this child component, the deployment is failing with an error saying that deployment failed. Now, if you think logically why it is happening, it is because for a reason that we had added this child component onto the case record page. as a part of earlier deployment, we did that. So in order to fix that, what I would do, I'll remove this child component, save this record page, do a hard refresh on this page, so that way I can double check if the child component is removed or not. The child component that got directly added to the record page is been removed. Let's do another round of deployment to see if this change would be deployed properly into the org or not. So this time it has successfully been deployed. The reason being, we have removed that child component directly added to the record page. Now, if I do a hard refresh, I would not see much of a change. Just that child component is still being used in the parent, and I do not have a child component added directly to the record page. If I go to the record page, do a hard refresh. If I go to the writing record page and do a hard refresh, try to find out for the child demo LWC. I do not see that in the listed components that are available for me to add it onto the screen. Earlier, I was able to do that because this child component attribute is set to true. That is why I was able to see that here. Now it is set to false. That is why I do not see that here. But people can still use that inside a component where the functionality would be working as it is, but no one can directly use that child component and add that onto the Lightning record page. That is how you can use your parent and child component to get your requirement done. Anything that can be reused, put it in your child and use it in your parent component to get the functionality done, and name the child component in a way that it calls out the need why we have created this LWC component in the first place. So that is all for this section, where we have understood what is parent-child LWC, how to enclose your child in your parent, and we have also understood what are the things that we need to keep in mind while adding your child component to your parent component. Make sure that you're using kebab case. You should not have anything in capitals in the HTML file when it comes to the naming of your LWC component. So if there are any capitals, make sure that you follow the kebab case, put a hyphen, and then write a small letter